What's your message to the new government? Do you think they get the kind of rural economy at all?
No, I don't think any of them have set foot outside Kentish Town for the last 35 years. No, they're a hopeless bunch.
So would you invite Keir to your pub, Keir Starmer, Prime Minister?
No, he's banned. He's actually the first person to be banned. He's actually on a board in the hall. He's banned.
Why? What have you got against him?
Hello? Thought you were running a news operation.
Okay.
He hasn't done much to endear himself to me yet. Well, we'll have a look at farming. If I have a pig and I butcher it, I slaughter it and butcher it and turn it into a sausage, that sausage will cost here 74p. If I buy imported pig meat, make it into a sausage, it's 18p.
Yeah, that is amazing.
Something's wrong with our food system in this country.
Keir Starmer just walked into a political trap, and the bait was set by none other than Jeremy Clarkson. Yes, Clarkson. The man known for turning car reviews into national controversies just turned a quiet policy debate into a full-blown political bonfire. And Starmer? He melted faster than an ice cream on the bonnet of a V8 engine. It started like any typical press moment. Starmer showed up with a carefully crafted statement, the kind that tries really hard not to offend anyone but ends up saying absolutely nothing. But before he could settle into his usual rhythm of supporting everyone while committing to nothing, Clarkson dropped in with the energy of a farmhand who's just been told he can't use his own tractor.
Well, Jeremy Clarkson has said, I'm surrounded by farmers and plasterers and brickies and butchers, and all I hear all day long is that there is too much immigration. He said, but if they say this out loud or if they go on a march, they are told by the London elite that they are far-right extremists or racist thugs. For the most part, he says, they're not. They're just people who know that they have to shut up when the last post is played and that a cheese rolling down a hill is funny. And he said the fact is that 4 million people voted for reform. And he said, and more than that voted for Brexit. And Keir Starmer is upsetting them. He doesn't use that phrase. He says he's annoying them by labelling them as modern-day Hitlers. And he says, I therefore suggest that both he and his friends at the BBC calm down the rhetoric or we could be heading for some serious trouble. And he's absolutely right.
In just a few sentences, Clarkson cut through Starmer's polished talking points with the kind of blunt honesty Westminster hasn't seen in years. He wasn't reading from a teleprompter. He didn't dance around with buzzwords or party-approved jargon. He just called out the elephant in the room and then backed it over with a metaphorical Land Rover. He saw a political class fumbling with numbers and narratives, while farmers across the country were boiling with frustration. And he said what a lot of people were thinking. How can Starmer claim to support farmers while backing policies that make it harder for them to survive?
Interview in the Telegraph, he said, for example, he said, London's really suffering, I think. You see streets and think, God, this was thriving not that long ago. Now it's all boarded up, or charity shops. As you walk around for the first time in all of London, you're conscious about not being on your phone. Be careful. It's a big change. It's socialism. The sewage doesn't work. Mobile phone coverage has got worse, and the potholes. He goes on to say, I know I'm sounding like an old person now, but it is shocking. I don't know what they do with the money. Well, I would say, particularly now we've got the...
Starmer, clearly rattled, tried to reel off funding figures and tax exemptions like he was reciting a bedtime story. But the crowd wasn't sleepy, they were furious. The issue wasn't just about inheritance tax or sustainability pledges, it was about trust, about listening. And Clarkson, for all his controversy, actually did that. While Starmer clung to policy briefings like a safety blanket, Clarkson spoke plainly. Farmers, he said, are being painted as villains for voicing concerns. People who dare to speak out are immediately branded extremists. It's not just insulting, it's dangerous. In that moment, Clarkson did what Labour's PR machine couldn't. He connected, not as a politician, but as someone unafraid to challenge the status quo. And that connection hit harder than any soundbite Starmer has delivered all year. The backlash wasn't just about numbers, it was about authenticity, or rather, the lack of it. Starmer's leadership has long been accused of being too cautious, too scripted, too beige. And Clarkson, with all his rough edges and unapologetic opinions, blew that beige wide open.
Government is this, their entire philosophy is this. tax the private sector to the hilt. Sort of, in a sense, rob hard-working individuals and successful businesses of as much money as possible and give it to your rapidly increasing public sector, who don't do very much, who don't even bother to go to work. They all work from home, you know, servicing ministries that are completely empty all the time. So you take all the money that innovative, spirited, you know, entrepreneurial people make, and you give it to people who sit around at home working from home and don't go to the Ministry of Defence or wherever they work. I think it's that. I think that's one of the problems. The money is all going to the public sector and it's not being spent on the people of this country.
While Starmer tiptoed through political landmines, Clarkson came in swinging. Not with personal attacks, but with plain frustration. He spoke for those who feel ignored, for those tired of politicians dodging real answers with polished platitudes. And when Clarkson mocked Starmer's talking points as lifeless and out of touch, the public didn't flinch. They nodded. Because it's one thing to oppose bad policy, it's another to expose the hollowness behind it. Starmer's carefully moderated tone couldn't compete with Clarkson's unfiltered fire. Not when people are watching their industries crumble under red tape and green policies made in air-conditioned offices. In the end, the debate wasn't just Clarkson versus Starmer, it was conviction versus calculation, and the guy known for toppling caravans on live TV walked away looking more grounded than the man auditioning to run the country. As the cameras kept rolling, Starmer tried to regain control. He pivoted to his usual fallback: budget allocations, climate goals, and a generous helping of vagueness. He mentioned billions for sustainability and disease prevention like he was reading off a receipt, hoping the numbers would impress. But numbers without direction don't mean much, especially not when Clarkson just painted a clearer picture using nothing but common sense and frustration. Starmer, for all his legal training and measured tone, looked exposed. His words felt hollow, his stance uncertain. And Clarkson, leather jacket, smirk and all, stood there looking more sincere than the man with a manifesto.
So it's not about you, it's not about your farm and the fact that you bought a farm to avoid inheritance tax?
Classic BBC there, classic. Oh yeah, it's not the fact that I bought a farm to avoid inheritance tax. The fact.
You told the Sunday Times in 2021 that's why you bought it.
People.
Sorry?
BBC. Okay, let's start from the beginning.
Sure.
I wanted a shoot, okay? That's even worse to the BBC. I wanted a shoot, which comes with the benefit of not having to pay inheritance tax. Now I do. But people like me will simply put it in a trust. And so long as I live for 7 years, that's fine. And as my daughter said, you will live for 7 years. You might be in a deep freeze at the end of it, but you will live for 7 years. But it's incredibly time-consuming to have to do that. And why should all these people have to do that? Why should they?
What is your message to this government?
Please back down, please.
When a TV presenter with a history of punching producers can deliver a more compelling argument than the leader of the opposition, it's not satire. It's a symptom. It wasn't just the clash of personalities, it was the contrast in conviction. Starmer spoke like a man afraid of making the wrong impression. Clarkson spoke like someone who simply couldn't care less about impressing anyone. And that's exactly why people listened. Clarkson didn't dodge. He addressed immigration, inheritance tax, even government overreach, and instead of sanitizing his language, he leaned into it. He said what millions whisper in pubs, at farm gates, or during sleepless nights staring at empty bank accounts. That this government, and the opposition chasing its shadow, has forgotten the backbone of Britain. Its workers, its farmers, its ordinary people.
We had Kevin Hollinrake on the show earlier who was urging that Jeremy Clarkson should stand for Parliament, that he'd welcome him into Parliament. How would you feel about Jeremy Clarkson on the Green benches, Emily Thornberry?
Whatever. I mean, whatever. If people want to vote for him, fine. You know, whatever.
And for Starmer, this wasn't just a bad day at the office. It was a defining moment. A live, public reminder that safe answers won't cut through anymore. That public trust can't be managed into existence. It has to be earned. By the time Clarkson wrapped up his thoughts, it wasn't just Starmer who looked rattled. It was the whole image Labour's spent years crafting, because no amount of policy polish can cover up a leader who can't lead the room, let alone the country. What made the whole exchange even more brutal was that Clarkson didn't need to shout. He didn't throw tantrums or storm off set. He just held up a mirror and let Starmer flinch at the reflection. This wasn't the kind of political takedown that trends on Twitter for a few hours and fades. This hit deeper, because underneath the jabs and jokes was a serious question. Who is Keir Starmer really? Not the party-approved bio, not the rehearsed lines, but the man. What does he stand for when the script runs out? When Clarkson stripped the stage bare, all that was left was a politician scrambling for neutral ground while the country demanded bold action. And Clarkson, he didn't offer himself as the solution. He didn't claim to have all the answers, but he made it painfully clear that pretending everything's fine while entire communities shout for help isn't leadership. It's avoidance. The irony? The loudest voice of reason in that moment wasn't in Parliament. It was a man once suspended for punching someone over a cold steak, and somehow he made more sense than half the cabinet combined. The timing couldn't have been worse for Starmer. With the Conservative Party unravelling, this should have been his moment to shine. Instead, he stumbled. Again, not because of a scandal, not because of a rival party surge, but because a TV presenter asked harder questions than most journalists. Clarkson didn't just criticise. He crystallised what so many feel, that Starmer is trying to win by default. No bold promises, no daring reforms, just a slow shuffle to the finish line, hoping the public prefers mild over messy. And the farmers protesting across the country, they weren't watching with apathy, they were cheering, not for Clarkson as a hero, but for finally seeing someone say what needed to be said without hiding behind a podium or a focus group. Their anger isn't about ideology, it's about survival. About taxes and rules written by people who've never set foot on a farm. So when Clarkson mocked Starmer's dithering, it wasn't just funny, it was cathartic. It wasn't personal, it was political theatre, yes, but with a plot that felt real. A reminder that, in the absence of true leadership, even the loudest troublemakers can start sounding like prophets. The emotional breaking point came when a farmer broke down on camera. Not for politics, but survival. Her voice shook, her future felt stolen. Starmer's response? Numbers. Clarkson's? Truth. Well, Starmer sounded like a spreadsheet. Clarkson spoke like someone who actually listens. He wasn't polished, he was blunt. And in that moment that mattered more than any press release. Clarkson exposed more than policy flaws, he exposed Starmer's emptiness. No fire, no fight, just rehearsed lines and nervous glances. While Clarkson came off as raw and real, Starmer looked like a man who didn't belong in the conversation, let alone lead it. Online, the fallout was instant. Clips went viral, memes mocked Starmer as lifeless and robotic. Even Boris Johnson chimed in, agreeing with Clarkson's take on inheritance tax. The truth is, Clarkson didn't win a debate. He revealed Starmer never showed up to it. And in a time when voters crave boldness, Starmer delivered beige. Clarkson walked away with the public's attention. Starmer walked away exposed, and that may be the biggest warning of all. Starmer, clearly rattled, tried to reel off funding figures and tax exemptions like he was reciting a bedtime story. But the crowd wasn't sleepy, they were furious. The issue wasn't just about inheritance tax or sustainability pledges, it was about trust, about listening. And Clarkson, for all his controversy, actually did that. While Starmer clung to policy briefings like a safety blanket, Clarkson spoke plainly. Farmers, he said, are being painted as villains for voicing concerns. People who dare to speak out are immediately branded extremists. It's not just insulting, it's dangerous. In that moment, Clarkson did what Labour's PR machine couldn't. He connected, not as a politician, but as someone unafraid to challenge the status quo. And that connection hit harder than any soundbite Starmer has delivered all year. The backlash wasn't just about numbers, it was about authenticity, or rather, the lack of it. Starmer's leadership has long been accused of being too cautious, too scripted, too beige. And Clarkson, with all his rough edges and unapologetic opinions, blew that beige wide open. So while Starmer drafts his next press release hoping to recapture control, Clarkson has already moved on, unbothered, uncensored, and weirdly more politically relevant than ever. And that might be the most damning part of all. If you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more updates like this. Share your thoughts in the comments below.